Right on.
Okay, remember we talked about after it's recording, Brian? Are we recording?
Was that in person?
Oh. No, that's what we say, hey, thank you for a great meeting, we'll see you all next time. Hello?
I just hit record it, maybe hopefully that means it'll stay away. Oh, no, somehow now I've got that otter thing. Ah.
Oh, the AI following it? How are you refreshing? Thank you. 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that's a great aroma there.
Pizza. Musk.
Yeah, no, or pizza, or something to sweet.
Axe body wash for 13-year-old.
Banish the thought.
Smell that on you too.
Well, hello there.
Pretty.
Hey, my man. Nice to see you. Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Not so close, guys. Full on. So.
Yeah.
I feel the same.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, it's you're the only one on that's working on Zoom that's not there. I just want to check to make sure you can hear everyone okay. They don't have the others.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
But I was on it for the last time. Yeah, that's and that's the wars. Renee, will you say something now?
Hi, I'm sorry I'm not there. Can you hear me?
Barely, but it's also loud in here, so maybe it's okay. We'll roll with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't call me. Now, Carrie, you were not talking about bringing the refreshments to this and all.
They are hiding back there, and I've got some really bad receipts. Yeah.
We celebrate the environment.
Thanks for letting me know.
Okay. You guys geared up for graduation this year. Yeah. There.
Oh, no. So I was feeling sick.
I was, yeah.
That's the meeting. Yeah.
That's the only fix I know of.
That's only.
Again, we'll get like 5 or 10 minutes.
That's what I learned in IT school, turn it off, turn it on, plug it back in.
Now, when I graduated, I started. Happy to share that.
No?
So what we.
Are we waiting for others?
No, I think I'm just letting Alex present right now, and then
I think. Okay, yeah, I think we can get started. Everybody ready? Ready to dive in? Thank you for all showing up here again today. I'm gonna start, well, let's start the meeting, at least just first going, I know I just want to make sure that we reiterate this every single time, that we're together, that we know why we're here together, and so, you know, what our mission is, that we're working together to balance sustainable outdoor recreation and conservation. And we're doing this one topic at a time, we're creating goals and strategies for each one of those topics, and this will then become our regional outdoor strategy, which actually then incorporates into the Colorado outdoor strategy, so on the statewide level, with the Colorado Outdoor Partnership. So, anybody thinks we're doing something else? Maybe now's the time to go. Anyway, next thing is I want to make an announcement, and I think most everybody here knows Kara Gilder. If you don't, I want to introduce her real quick. And she has just accepted the position of executive director of the Montelores Coalition.
I'm really excited to be here and to embark on this journey with you all. I remember when I first met Michelle and she was telling me about the coalition back when I was working at KSJD, this big light went off inside me and I just couldn't ask her enough questions and I got really excited and I was always forwarding people emails about this group. So never in a million years did I imagine that I would be in this position, but I'm delighted to be here. And I have worked with some of you a lot, some of you some, and some of you are new to me, but I'm super excited and I know that this is a great group and we can get a lot done. So thank you for having me and get some stuff done.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you. I will also quickly just say that I'm wearing two hats today, so I'm wearing the new Montelores Coalition hat, but I'm also wearing the Park Service hat, which is my current employment, and I'm sitting in for Paul Morin today, so. Thanks.
The interpreter, Jason, are you gonna do
Yeah. We do have this screen, but I can't, now it's been a while since I remember.
We can try
Clapping,
it
we could jump on this one.
if it gets really
I
bad.
wonder if I could actually do that at the same time.
Do you want me to start and just see
So,
how?
yeah, we should start.
Okay, so we're having projector problems. It's that projector just keeps turning off
This
or
might be.
cutting out. For some reason, we don't know. But we're gonna go ahead and get started. So here's where we are. We're working on, finishing up topic 3. We actually barely got started on it. We just got started on topic 3. So we're trying to get through that if we can. And we have another meeting to kind of finish up topic 3 and 4. So it's pretty ambitious. Like if we could finish topics 3 and 4, that we have a whole meeting dedicated to reviewing the whole enchilada, all the goals and strategies that we've devoted. But you know, we just gotta do as much as we can do. We'll adapt from there if we need to. But the original plan was finish topic 3 and 4 today. And then I will put together all of the goals and strategies into one document. And then we can review it all. And then we have an additional meeting after that to work on action plans, which is like the next step of detail from the strategies. What actions need to take place to implement the strategies? So the plan structure again, we're working on goals and strategies. mostly to get in these meetings, but we are gonna get there. We're gonna get into more detail coming up. So I have some background information related to topic 3, and topic 4 as well. So I was gonna go through that real quick. My speech, I always gotta do at least one speech. So we'll get it, get it out of the way earlier this time. I referred back, I've read the Colorado Outdoor Strategy. I bet several of you have read it as well, but it's been a while. So I actually went back, reviewed it. Because I was curious what the way that they were talking about, their funding strategy at the state level. So they actually have in the Colorado Outdoor Strategy a section on, like, basically conceptual section on how they're gonna fund this program. Which is similar to where we are, right? That surprised me that they weren't kind of further than we are, but they really are. They're kind of in the same place, at least at the time this plan got drafted. Which was last summer, basically, right? So basically, the first thing that they say is that, we want to align public and private funding opportunities with goals, project needs, and priorities. And the emphasis, like, they really emphasize, the state really emphasizes a priority to continue to find funding for the regional partnerships. It's pretty clear that the statewide plan relies on the regional partnerships because they are thinking of this in terms of projects. We know that, right? We've kind of talked about that, but it's just a reminder, like, as to what's gonna translate well into the way the state is thinking about this. It's projects, and they wanna know, so they're thinking like, one of the near-term steps, in related to funding is to begin to prioritize. So they wanna identify urgent categories of projects. So this is gonna be the state's take on it. Hey, maybe groups like Montelores could influence that to some degree. If this gets really bad, we can take a second and try and get on that other. I mean, this started failing, like, right, as people were walking away, it was fine, and then people started showing up. It's
Part of the magnetic.
but here we are. So they wanna identify urgent categories of projects, and then they want to create a database of projects' costs and funding rates. Right, so they're kind of like, they're leaning on the regional partnerships to get them to this point. And they want sort of packaged projects, and they want costs. So that they can begin to find specific funding needs based on what that is. So they're really, the way I look at it is they're kind of doing, it's sort of a rolling approach. They have some ideas about funding, but they want to see what comes out of it, out of the regional partnerships before they really put pen to paper on what are the funding sources. But then when you go further into it and they talk about identifying additional funds, it strikes me, they don't really have funding for this, right? Like, there's not an earmark, it's not like a state program like Energy Impact or something where there's an identified funding source that's already there, and it's gonna be there. They're finding funding based on what the need is, based on the gap, based on the reaction. So that's one of the reasons why I think they're funding projects. They do not like, the state of Colorado generally does not like to fund operations. They don't like to fund staff. They'll do it in certain situations for a limited time. But like long-term, they won't commit a program like this to funding operations. They want this to be project-based, right? And the ongoing, they don't really talk about the ongoing funding of the regional partnerships necessarily, other than they want to keep them going. So this was a little bit, I just didn't read it that closely the first time through, but it was a little bit enlightening in terms of like, this thing of like trying to identify local funding is really something to work on. Because the state isn't, they don't really have a specific funding strategy for this.
To your point too about project funding, I want to point out, and I spoke to the executive committee about this, but, GOCO has, set aside $50 million over the next 5 years in their strategic plan, specific to project implementation for regional partnerships.
Okay. That's different, that's a different thing that GOCO has ever done.
It is, and it's all in one bucket, it's not in individual canisters, so that's in our.
That's cool, I didn't know that. See, we gotta have these meetings with us. So so like identifying the projects is super important. So I wanted to look at, I just thought, okay, let's look at a couple examples of local funding for outdoor rec. And I've got a municipal example and a county example. The municipal example is Steamboat Springs, and it goes way back. They, Steamboat Springs is a progressive city and they have home rule city government. And so they have a lot of like legal leeway, I guess, in the world. The counties don't. And maybe statutory towns wouldn't, but they in '86 passed a lodging tax, accommodation tax which pretty aggressively to fund the development of improvements and amenities which promote tourism and enhance the community identity, environmental desirability, and economic health. So they were, they had a more liberal interpretation on what you can do with the lodging tax than a lot of jurisdictions. Probably had something to do with their home rule municipality and aggressive attorneys and all that kind of stuff. So, but they did it. And I mean, they're funding improvements that are that will help with tourism. So then in 2013, it evolved and they put another vote out there to allocate that funding, or at least part of it, to building trails in and around in the Steamboat area. So the allocation was $300K each year for 3 years, and then $600K for 7 years, 5.1 million total of the accommodations tax. That's not all of it. They kind of break it in up there. But it's a good chunk of it. And it was, the city council had appointed this group called the Trails Alliance, and they put together a big proposal. And I think maybe the proposal was in advance of the vote, because they had to get, community support behind it. And they'd already been using it for improvements, right? That was already in the cards. They were using, I don't know what they were doing with it, probably Austin Hill and that kind of stuff, I would imagine. And so it passed, and then, and they're finishing up. So basically in December 2024, council authorized the last chunk of it to build, the trail system on Rabbit Ridge Pass, which was controversial. And that's how I got involved. Controversial planning stuff, it shows up, everything's better. But yeah, it was very controversial, but they worked through it, and they were getting challenged on the legality of it. And the city attorney just shut it down and said, we have authority to do this with our city tax, and they never really got sued. The opposition probably felt like they didn't have a good case. So that was a county example, pretty interesting. Chaffey County, we all heard of, right? But so this is a county, city example. Steamboat is the city example. This is a county example. In 2018, they voted for a 1/4-cent sales tax. For all these different reasons: strengthening forest health, conserving working lands. So it's only partly for recreation. A lot of it is these are all interrelated things, but a lot of it is sort of forest health and watershed restoration type stuff. And this never would have happened if they hadn't done a community plan in 2017, envision Chaffey County. It's a more, I guess, liberally positioned Chaffey County is, but you can't nail and you can't pigeonhole what that county is. It's a complicated, Colorado Mountain County And they managed to do this, but in part because they did a community plan that laid the foundation for this thing. This was like a huge priority, so the people that came out of that had already been in the newspaper, people knew about it, they voted for it. And the way it works basically is there's an advisory committee that recommends grant awards. And the BOCC makes the final funding decisions. So the citizens are advisory, the Board of County Commissioners have the final say. It boils down to it's $1 to $1.5 million for recreation in 10 years. So it's not as much money as I had imagined until I really started drilling into it. But they're leveraging the heck out of it, right? They're leveraging that money and it gives them a lot of confidence that they've got that kind of support from their voters to be helping pay for this kind of stuff. So anyways, that was kind of interesting. Another example is right here before us, which is basically that tourism marketing organizations have started to do destination management, over the past, this really kind of started in like 2018 even. People were starting to get irritated with too many events and this sort of stuff, and so it started that way in COVID, the craziness, with outdoor rec and visitation, COVID really brought it to a head, I think, for a lot of communities. And, basically destination management it's like, and fill me in if there's more to it, but a lot of it is kind of stewardship education and deliberately promoting certain things and forgetting to mention other things. So that's more or less what it is. I don't know if you have.
Closing it, Gabe, I don't want to take all the time, but it is also curating the visitor experience, so that's where we work with hoteliers, any kind of lodger, any kind of food and beverage, anybody with a retail experience, a recreational activity or an experiential opportunity, and we try to help those folks do things that are gonna make sense in the first 12 to 18 months for them, that are gonna be the most impactful, so their business model really succeeds well. And then we try to maintain that level of interaction, keep people aware of what the guests are looking for, make sure that we're curating that experience, so when the guests come here the second or third time, they're not disappointed, it's better than the last. And a lot more that goes into that as well, but we're very lucky to have that here.
And so you got a lot of places doing this. I mean, there's probably more, but we've got Mesa Verde countries doing it. Visit Durango is doing it, making a huge deal out of it, by the way. Like, they were in trouble and they made a big deal out of it. They did a whole plan and all this stuff and like announced that they were retooling. And so, Chaffey County Visitors Bureau definitely engages in this, and as Visit Estes Park. So these are crazy busy tourist communities that have kind of rechanneled some of the resources from tourism marketing into back into destination management.
I can do one, we'll see.
Those
Apparently not.
This is pretty hard. I'll just keep doing, keep talking though, because I think.
For those of you online, for some reason, this, well, I'm not sure where the problem is, but screen keeps dying. Yeah, noticed.
I wanted to, this is kind of, it's related, but I wanted to like review the fact that, during the Montezuma County Outdoor Recreation Use and Economic Impact Study, we came up with basically almost $80 million of spending related. Drinks, shopping, souvenirs, recreation, entertainment, lodging, gas, travel, those kind of subsectors. It adds up to almost $80 million. And so it really is like a contributor to taxes, because of that. So we've got, there's total for combined lodgers tax collections in Montezuma County and Cortez, 150,000 from the lodgers tax of those sales that I just mentioned from outdoor rec. 3.1 million total tax collections. So it's quite a lot. 3.1 million total sales tax collections for the municipalities, and then Montezuma County Hospital District has a tax, so it's generating 3.6 million annually in taxes. So I think that's kind of like a talking point to carry into this discussion about how outdoor rec actually currently generates revenue because it's attracting visitors and visitors sprinkle money and all that. So that's that piece of it. Moving on, well, okay, maybe we'll save this until we're on that topic. So these are a few slides about the, business development piece. We are gonna just fast forward to goal 3. We kind of went through some of this last time. We had a discussion last time about goal 3.1. And I edited it. Because it said before, it was pretty clinical. It said like develop a capital improvements plan and funding strategy, the capital improvements plan. After reviewing that thing, I just said, okay, let's talk about it, developing an advisory outdoor recreation projects plan. Right? I put advisory in there. Because what the problem was, is that when you say capital improvements, it triggers, that word means something in federal government speak that we didn't want to get involved in, too complicated. And it might actually get in our way. So that's the only goal that we really reviewed. We really reviewed going into that, and that's kind of the rhythm here is to review the goals, and then we'll dive into the strategies for the individual goals. So I don't know if you all think, did we get there on goal 3.1?
Well, my concern I brought up last time is that we've got, I think there are plenty of projects that are out there, but they don't necessarily have to be, for instance, trail projects. And the concern with some of these projects is that we have, trails project is that we have really strong trail groups around here that are already doing this as far as trails. So I don't want to reinvent the wheel for something that's already working. I want to look at other projects that we maybe, other projects that may not be on public lands. They may be, we've talked about workforce development in the past. And that's that workforce that we think is so important right here. So just want to make sure that we keep clear eyes when we go through this and not pigeonhole or pull some of our successful partnerships that already have trail plans, for instance, into this group. We have some representation from the Eco Trails Alliance, for instance, on trails. And with Jake here as well, from that to a degree, I think. But again, I want to make sure that we support our existing partnerships that are already doing good work and look at those projects that need to be held up by other folks or other parties.
I want to put that as a strategy.
Or capture however we want to do with that.
I almost want to say don't entangle it with this, but
Yeah. Don't break something that's not.
yeah. I think support their,
On time.
their independence or something like that.
Yeah, support their independence, but also, they do kind of work in their own little silos.
Yep.
And I think they appreciate that because they're focused on different parts of the county. But at the same time, I think Maker's Trails Group is a good example where they've just, they've really completed a huge project over there at the aqueduct. And a lot of their volunteers are kind of looking for new ways to get engaged. And last week, the Montelores leadership, both Jason and James presented on the state of the BR Mesa Verde. How can we engage people already involved in those groups to collaborate on other things together?
That's the paths to Mesa Verde.
Yeah.
Okay.
Path to Mesa Verde. So I guess I was just thinking about that after you two presented, they have their every Tuesday night trail work with SWICA, and they do have some really good volunteers. But I think those volunteers would definitely want to be engaged and involved at a broader level if the opportunity was, to be there for them to kind of unite in that way, because, you know, you put a lot of hand to make easy work, you know?
Okay, cool. We just like got another strategy for that. Oh geez, I lost it. Okay. Do we, what, on this, the goal 3.2, develop and implement a funding strategy for outdoor recreation projects. Be able to do that. Like, I guess that's kind of my opening question for that one is, the state is expecting. My read on it, kind of, and I don't know what your take is on it, Michelle, but my read on it kind of is, the state wants us to come up with how much this is gonna cost to apply for it, like it's a grant.
I think they have to have that from us because frankly, Gabe, that's how they're then going back and monitoring the budget that they have to play with and saying, okay, this, and this based on what we tell them in that. I think it's then a good part of the process.
So is your understanding, Gabe, looking at all this of the regional outdoor rec and conservation plan strategy that we are working on, essentially, I mean, the heart of it is identifying regional collaborative projects and funding, how we're going to support and fund those. Is that practically speaking what a regional plan looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how the state will best consume it, right, and use it. I think we can do other things. You know, it can be a strategic plan, and it is. But I think the
Right.
state is really like, we know how the state operates, like this is gonna be kind of this, another version of the way they operate in other spaces. You know, they want us to like come up with a project, us to have the capacity to do it, present this in a tidy package in a grant application, and then the state can weigh it against other applicants and go for the best one. That's kind of probably where this is going. Or maybe there's a, you know, priorities list. Maybe you can't apply for your project, your top project at Montelores right away because it's not on the state's top priorities. So it'd be like a couple funding cycles down, but I don't know, on the funding strategy, kind of like, we're at the planning level here. We're not, I don't know, I mean, I'm certainly not prepared to cost out some of this stuff.
Yeah,
I mean,
project, yeah, so.
I just wonder how that, like, whether, you know, agency folks are intimidated by that, like coming up with a cost, like well in advance of actually. It's a little bit outside of the way that you guys operate, I think.
Okay, I know my experience with the state, especially in the last couple of years, they want the local organizations to have skin in the blame, skin in the game. They want someone to blame. Sorry. They want the local ones though to have skin in the game. And then if that doesn't work, they want someone to blame. And that is the true story. The state's up here being the conductor of the orchestra and handing that out. If it fails, they do want a little bit of an out on there to help it succeed. They just want to know that we have skin in the game and we're very involved with that. And I think that it's not unreasonable for us to give them the more generic or general versions first, till we really know that down. If we don't do that, they'll probably skip over because they are looking for something that they can codify with a number or a percentage or something to make it.
And looking at the examples that you gave us, you know, I think it's pretty clear what that skin looks like is some kind of ballot initiative. The tax base is supporting the overall plan through it's whatever funding mechanisms are available, and that probably speaks some about the strategy or the sustainability of anything we come up with is if it's got an ongoing revenue source, probably gonna make us more competitive if we're applying for like one-off grants to like get us over the hump. So this is where I figured it would go at some point as a group is like, are we now saying do we need to like look at something like that? And run some kind of an initiative around that at some point. I mean, we can put in a list of things to think about and test the community, see if there's appetite. for that tax revenue piece.
I'd love to see, a community supported, tax supported recreation program, but we do, reality is that it's difficult to get any new tax, as you know.
Yeah.
Push.
Yeah, I work for a
Yeah,
municipality, I
exactly, yeah.
understand it.
Yeah, and, I just don't, I don't know if our time would be well spent at that point. I mean, looking at some of the numbers that you went through just with what's derived from sales tax, that's a chunk, but it would be a much tinier chunk if we had a standalone, rec tax of sorts. And,
It would be much harder to create a new tax than it would be to reallocate some already existing tax.
right, yeah, and if reallocation,
Yeah.
been on hospital boards, how hard it is to get those things through. We've watched our fire, schools and police struggle to move things through, and they have, but those are sort of core needs, so.
Is there like a preliminary? If we were just to say, okay, it's like, we have to do this. I'm not sure honestly on that now, but if we just were to say, okay, we have to do this in order to be competitive, I mean, not like I came up with a city example and a county example. It sounds like I was just like, it was, easy to find that. I don't really know of any other ones. To be honest, I really don't know of any other ones other than Chafin County and Steamboat. Maybe there are some. But I don't know.
The local places might have done something, that.
Summit County probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't come up with anything. That Steamboat thing, that was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that. And it's been around a long time. I had never come across that. Whoa, a tax for trails. Geez, and it's not for the city parks department.
Right.
They're paying contracting with the Forest Service to get those trails built. Because the Forest Service has to build those trails up on years past. You can't have. You at least have to have the supervisor up there. So anyways, what is the first, like, how do we, in Chafin County, they did the Envision Chafin County. They thought about this for a long time. What is the step here? If we were just to be ambitious and say, we're gonna try to do this, what is the preliminary step to putting it on the ballot?
Well, I think there's various ways. I know one of them, Telluride has an open space commission, and that's through sales tax, not a, land tax.
But through a retail sales tax.
Yeah, retail.
It would have to be municipally driven program, because the feds can't, implement any tax, taxation. And,
But with sales tax, at least it's, visitors are also helping to contribute towards it
yeah,
instead of just landlord tax.
well, hasn't
Right.
honest,
If you're doing municipally driven too, though, that means Cortez, Mancos, Dolores, Dog Creek, Rico are all different.
Yeah, Cortez is a
That's
home rule community.
A lot of different initiatives to try to.
Can it be county though?
If there were money in it, we could count.
yeah, I mean, if the county's gonna pursue.
No, I don't mean it.
If the county's gonna pursue a tax, it's gonna meet the shortfalls that are impacting their current budget situation. It's just I just don't see the support for something like that.
I think Jason really called this several meetings ago when you talked about the need to start to monetize some of this, and you were spot on. And I know a lot of my partners at CTO, Colorado Tourism Office, they're freaking out right now because they're losing federal funding, of course, as we're speaking. The nice thing is, they're not necessarily looking for an immediate answer, they're looking for a secondary, perhaps a tertiary year plan, to where we say, we understand and we're gonna feel our way through this with you too. We're cognizant of it, but we don't have the answer right now. From what I've heard, certainly from the OEDIT side, that's enough to keep them in the game. If we overcommit, I don't know that we can do anything between the two when it comes to that, because I think we all at this table know how hard it is to raise lodging tax, retail tax. Ask the fire department how hard they try to do anything, so.
Yeah. So when you say monetize, we just have to get some costs.
We need to get some costs, we need to look at ways that revenue might come in, unexpected ways that people haven't necessarily directed it to as well. The commissioners get very excited about that. So. And the state, very excited.
Okay.
And because it comes from the grassroots, there's a little bit more onus behind that, and people think, you know, okay, they know what they can do, it's their turn.
I was leery to put, should I just say cost estimates for, like, assuming we can, with this group, offer some degree of prioritization? Like, I'd like to.
Yeah, I sort of feel like it's a little bit cart before the horse, because, I mean, we really need to have a prioritized project plan, and then identify who are the partners that are gonna be able to implement that plan that fits under our strategy. And that goes back to the question that we had before, are we the plan implementers, are we the facilitators for other local organizations to implement plans that fit within our guiding principles?
I hope we decided that they were facilitated.
Yeah.
Okay.
It would be really interesting to somehow find a way of key partners' budgets that have dollars allocated to grants, foundations, whatever it is, that are meeting objectives that fall within our strategic plan. Like
Exactly.
having those open discussions, inviting those organizations in and saying, you know, what do you think of this plan? How does this plan overlay things that you're doing? How can we help you get your objectives met? Because yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a huge thing to do to try to pursue the tax thing at this point.
We also have to make it known that we're not a threat to their existing tax base or their existing, you know, plan, so.
Right.
Well, and I assume, like Michelle's saying, cart before the horse, I assume we would have to be a long ways down the road with a really solid plan, solid projects, a lot of support for those, collaborative support for those projects. Maybe something at that point even adopted by the counties before we begin to talk about.
I think you're right, like in the form of just a resolution of support or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need it, well, in what we're doing, so we outline where we're going. We're a long ways from, it'd be suicide to go out there right now.
Oh, yeah,
I'm talking
yeah,
about
that's why I say second, third year, you know, I mean, I think that's where this really
Yeah.
comes.
getting money.
Just have,
But we could show success if we have an inventory,
Yeah.
you know, who are the partner organizations, how they fall
Yeah,
into
yeah.
that prioritized
Sure.
project plan,
Yeah,
and take that to the state and say,
Yeah.
look, we put this together, and here
Yeah,
are
I
the funding
agree.
sources, they're gonna
yeah,
fuel that.
yeah.
okay, am I get? Is what you were all saying more broad than this last bullet, seek a resolution? Resolutions, I got some problems here.
Local governments and partners.
Yeah, governments, partners and stakeholders, yeah.
So Gabe, what can we pull out of work that you and James did, with Montezuma County? When you did the outdoor rec plan? That, I mean, that identified projects to a degree, everything from paths to Mesa Verde. I'm just trying to figure out what we can take that isn't already supported by our partners, like Weaver Trails, Maker's Trails Group, Swicka, Mesa Verde, Backcountry Horsemen, Backcountry Hunters, Anglers, you know, other folks like that already are running the projects and try and throw some support behind some other projects such as Path to Mesa Verde. And I don't know enough, James, to understand what that means, but, you know, we do have we have the footprint, we have a path for success with the Path to Mesa Verde already laid out. And that seems to be no hanging fruit that maybe the county needs help with. I don't know.
Yeah, we need 13 million.
Yeah. Yeah, we're gonna tax you.
And I was in low hanging perennial fruit.
Yes, this year, yeah. That's all.
But yeah, you know, I think we ought to, you know, review, we had five projects that then kind of shook out, so we can review all those 5 projects.
Yeah, and I don't want to forget Dolores County.
Right.
5 projects that shook out in your rec plan. Yeah.
I have a question about this. So are we saying that we're gonna look at the projects that partners or potential partners already have on their books and kind of gather it all together somehow, and then if that's what we're doing, what role are we, how do we then support that? I mean, if those projects are already going independently, what are we offering?
I think you hit my concerns on the head, is that they don't really need that kind of help from us.
And they don't want it, frankly.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm wondering, like, I can see how it could be useful to gather sort of a state of the union in a way, like, here's what's going on in our communities. But it's not, it doesn't, I don't, and obviously I'm brand new, but I'm not sure how that ties to what we're doing, how we're moving forward, and how we can help.
In many ways, it's low hanging fruit, it's things that we know are somewhat needed, not like, I'll take the 13 million bucks. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, but how do we get it?
It's a nice check of the pulse for the community, and
Okay.
how engaged they are, and how committed they are. And I think
Okay,
that's
that
the
helps,
benefit.
thank you.
I kind of think what that to be a strategy though, to inventory all the projects that the other. I think we need to know what they all are. I mean, the road, we know the trails, right?
Yeah, really, it's maintenance right now, I mean, that's the big push, we don't have anything shovel ready, we have to go through a fair amount of analysis. And we're starting to infill areas that, from an infrastructure standpoint, can support development, but we're also starting to impact wildlife. And then, the Fed's capacity to, maintain these sites, so we're facing somewhat some restrictive points in our decision making and in our development that, we may not be able to get through to come up with a good project, But again, a lot of the projects that the trails folks bring to us are, reroutes. Of course, they'd love to see much more development, but again, we're gonna hit that wildlife issue. We have ranch and wildlife interests here, the ranchers and wildlife issues, wildlife partners that we're gonna have to work with too, to ensure we protect, things that they live too. So,
Well, we had, I mean. Two of the project plans for Montezuma, the Montezuma Oric project that popped into my mind. One was, basically it came down to, when we really researched it, there's a South Gateway project for City of Cortez, right near Hawkins Preserve. That's basically a pull-out Instagram thing, like right by Hawkins Preserve. So it's by the south, it's kind of an entry to the city. It's in a gateway that needs some help. And it's also right by Hawkins Preserve, which is awesome and nobody knows about, and it's completely underutilized. And so it was, the idea was Kiosk Trail. This is actually something that we're like, we should do this. And then James found a plan from, I don't know, 2008 or 2010 or something like that. That was this gateway. It was basically exactly what we kept saying, easy access. So that was one of them. The other one was improvements to House Creek. I don't know if you remember that, but yeah, we were trying to, like, the initial idea was better paddleboard access, like right from closer to Dolores. But that's complex and screwed up for a whole bunch of reasons.
It's on the wrong side.
Yeah, it's all just there, that's like
We
not.
should have flooded Dolores.
It's not really feasible, on good years, you've got the beach and stuff, so, but anyways, the real solution to that is to fix up House Creek a little bit for better, hand launch paddlecraft. And those those are like kind of the highest demand projects that like came out of the research. Like short, easy Instagram moments, and then paddleboard stuff and hand launch watercraft, access close to Dolores. And so those were a couple of them.
Well, Gabe, you're right on the money, and I think that it's important to remember, many of us in this room right now serve on the Cortez Brownfield Committee for the South Broadway Beautification Project, whatever the short term version is. I don't know what it's called, and I'm on the committee, so, but my point is, there's money, there's interest, there's a lot of interest, there's a lot of movers and shakers behind it. Obviously, Helen West, I don't know if she's on the call or not, but she is definitely behind that. It's important to try and jump on things like that, where we already have that partnership support and all that going on. And I think that because it's a major port of entry, we're gonna touch a lot more people coming through there than we are at House Creek. House Creek is super important, but if I'm looking at the two, the biggest bang for the buck is there. And anybody who's driven up from anywhere south of town, into Cortez has probably noticed that there's a precipitous drop off in what you see and what you might expect as you drive through that area. Once you get to town, okay, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. Coming through there, I'm just being honest, okay? So that is something to think about at some point, and that's a constant cure. Once we fix that and we have a great Instagram spot, social spot, all that, there'll be other demands that will come from the Early Country Tourism Office, I can assure you. But it's a great opportunity for us, and it does align with what cities are already doing. There's county support for it too, so that might be something to consider, again, from the low hanging fruit.
Well, if we're trying to show some success and chase money, or we're being able to chase money, and show the state that we have had some successes. First, would there be funding available for your subway? It sounds like there's funding available for subway.
There's a part of it available through the brownfield situation.
So
That-
I want to caution you, Brian. So the Brownfields grant that we have is a complete planning grant. We have been, a lot of my sources are telling me there's not going to be a ton of grant funding available for the next couple years. So I don't know if we will be, I'm very excited about the area-wide plan. I think it looks great, but funding is a real issue, to be frank. I was pretty excited about it, but I've very tempered my thoughts on funding as of now. I don't know how much implementation funding we'll have.
I take that the way that you mean it, but it's also important to understand, we've already started on that project. We've already done some things with that project. There's movement there, so we're not starting from absolute zero, but I'm sensitive to what you say and I cannot argue about the funding.
Yeah, but the funding is pretty much gone for doing anything with that because it was mostly a planning grant. And so we're 80% through the way of the funding. And so that's, we don't have more funding to initiate any of those plans at the city right now.
I have to buy the trees and all that stuff myself now, Helen?
Yeah, I mean, but hopefully now we have a plan. We can go after some CDOT funding. And I did want to jump in there, establish a list of top priorities. I think you guys were talking about that outdoor rec plan, but they had 5 very specific top priorities in the Montezuma County outdoor rec plan that I thought were really good. I don't know who the speaker was, but touching on them, absolutely. The other one was establishing more retail business, which is more related to towns than our coalition, but it's a great
So
report.
I think that it's sort of, the strategy that comes out of this, I think, is something like this last one, where there's situations where the trails groups don't need this. But that gateway project, they might need, that could be, I don't know yet. It's, it's City of Cortez, there's a lot of complexities, CDOT, blah, blah. But maybe that's an example of one where they actually could use the coalition's help.
Yeah, the coalition objectives, just before you say that.
Also, when we're talking about inventorying projects from other organizations, local organizations, hopefully maybe some of them have a 3 to 5 year strategy and they kind of know what direction they're going. But I think it's important to inventory what are their fund sources too, because we want to build that trust that we're not competing for the same pots of money. So being able to identify that and sort of what are their priorities project wise and how are they planning to fund it. If we can compile that and bring it back to the state, so then when we do have pots of money that are, like GoCo specific to RPI project implementation, maybe that's where we can support these other organizations and say, we can get you this chunk, maybe we can apply for it if we can show the state that we have inventoried this and prioritized it.
So I just wanted to chime in. I'm Alex, Alex Krebs, and when BHA was approached to sign it off on and write a letter of support for the Pagosa Area Regional Partnership Initiative, I think a lot of the support comes from a place of collaboration with the realization that these local trails groups working in a silo is a particular problem when it comes to mitigating wildlife impacts and impacts from a sustainability standpoint, beyond what they might be capturing in those silos. And so I think to just say, from their perspective that they don't need the Montelores coalition is kind of a more of an open invitation to be a lot more critical from the groups that are interested in that, in what they're doing. If it's not being brought into this collective environment where we can try to mitigate those impacts from the standpoint of, for example, these new CPW GIS layers with habitat sensitivities delineated in them. I think that there's other people here that are wanting to be a part of those conversations as a group. So I just wanted to get that off my chest, I guess.
Yeah, I would agree. I think one of our roles is to avoid what happened in Steamboat, the Mad Rabbit trail system. Mess. And there's a lot of animosity up there around. And I think that, one of our goals is to avoid that situation.
And that animosity is around proliferation of people, impacts to wildlife, impacts to the local economy, bringing too many people in, impacting housing. So yeah, it's a bill that they will come, and we're not quite ready for that bill to come here.
And this reminds me of what we talked about as an executive committee when we formed, even before we got the roundtable, which was, we're not excited about, let's build some more trails. We're not excited about, the things like that we know are hot buttons that other people are doing and that are panicked. So if we get past that, get into the deeper stuff, we'll look unique to the state as well when we come before them. That's gonna help the most.
So is this all subjective or suggesting that maybe we want representatives of such organizations on this roundtable?
Well, we've got Jim Ostrom with Eco Trails.
Jim's here.
Yeah,
We don't have anyone from SWICA, we don't have anyone from MTG.
correct. And they were all invited, but I think they were maxed out
They were
like everybody in this room,
Yeah.
a number of boards and such, so.
Yeah.
So we really rely on, folks like Jim, to represent that group. And
One more heads up, just a thought, thinking of City of Cortez, and we're not announcing this yet, I guess, but just a heads up, I think this coalition would be really good to stay involved. Our Parks and Rec department is going to be doing a parks master plan for the next 18 months, probably starting this summer for about a year after that. So this is a great, that would be a great time to get involved. A lot of, I think, what Creighton is looking for is where do we need to build more bike paths to eventually connect the end point of the trails to Mesa Verde from Denny Lake to all of our schools and all of our parks. So you could bike theoretically all the way to the airport someday. So that kind of thing. So that is coming up in specific action item that we could be involved in.
So I have on the thing about the trails groups and the wildlife, I've got that in multiple names. And this is where we're at. So then those action notes talk about, actually working with CPW, because this is if it's a trails project, it's gonna be, there's a NEPA process that is coming. And so the idea is to kind of get in front of the formal process a little bit, right? I mean, that's the idea, is to communicate enough that the communication doesn't start once the NEPA is filed or whatever starts that ball rolling.
yeah, I mean, these are somewhat Forest Service and BLM centric roles here, because we already work with CPW on strategies to ensure that we minimize impact to wildlife. So I think, I don't know what an advisory committee I mean, I believe that we are that advisory committee. I'm struggling with building yet another committee on top of a committee that we're all sort of committed to.
I agree with Tom, it's extra insulation, it's gonna slow us down, it's not gonna be helpful at this point, so
All right. We gotta remember, I'm not gonna delete this one right
No,
now.
you're going to delete it.
But you can think about it and how do we kind of bridge this communications gap so that you don't.
We already do, we'll have some of the strategies in the second action note under 3.3 is. We implement wildlife, the timing restriction, we close House Creek motorized traffic, we close the fee overload to anybody who breathes or any kids. So we have these strategies in our big pockets that I think are supported by science and have good return, so.
Okay. We'll have to, that's why we gotta revisit this stuff.
Yeah.
Like some of this is like, you build on it, you build on it. So basically, we've got support existing partnership with trail groups that support their independence, and then we have that kind of, that offset in the multiple needs that we've got to work on more. Establish a list of top priority projects. Maybe we can get started on that in this plan, but eventually we're gonna have to really prioritize those projects because we've gotta go shopping around, right? And find funding strategies, so that's in this one, to basically look at funding sources that align with what we're trying to do. And then we've got to find projects that align with what the coalition's trying to do, that are maybe need help, like the entrance thing. That's a great idea. It was done by, it was drawn up by DHM, who are awesome people. And then it sat there until James remembered it when I was like, hey, what do you do? Like this, he's like, wait a minute, I remember this, and he went and found it, right? So, we gotta find all of this, like how many more of them are out there? I don't know, could be quite a lot. Jason's got everything in Vegas on Total Recall, so everything's same.
Yeah. We got a much more.
And lots of stuff, like the parks plan goes into trails plan, it goes out of the city limits, like the ambitious sucker that one is, I think. So those are, and I don't know if some of it's been implemented by public land stuff, but that's a really good example.
We're working in the municipal boundaries right now, trying to get those projects done.
Town of Morris has trails plan, we did it, it goes out of town, talks about connecting and all sorts of stuff, so those are trails plans, but there are also, other sorts of plans like that.
Well, it'd be interesting to synthesize some of these and grab that low hanging fruit. We could actually get something done, without costing. Obviously, we're all broke right now, it's gonna be a challenge, but I would like to see if we can synthesize some of those plans into something that may be accomplishable.
I see nowhere in here cost estimates, I guess we have.
Thought that was your recording, Keith?
Right. But I keep trying to write it down and then people tell me not to. They said, are these cost estimates like part of this or does it come?
That comes closer to really planning out these projects, because it's so difficult to place a price on things right now, especially as prices fluctuate. James has probably got a perfect example of something that started out relatively affordable and blossomed into a very expensive project.
So if I wanted to put a funding, like a cost estimate strategy in there, I would start it with once data is done. Then develop cost estimates. So fill in the blanks.
Well, yeah, once a plan is written and approved and got me excited about it.
Or specific, I would think maybe more specific projects.
Right.
Yeah.
But we need to sell some quick wins too, because as we all know,
Yeah.
what they're excited about, once we get those, then we're back in, then they're calling us, instead of us calling them, that's what we want to be, so.
So if I just use passive sentence construction, sorry about that. How's that work? That's what we're talking about. Once we get to that point where we have our top priorities, Yeah, and these are like, by the way that we said, we go look for organizations that have projects going, we go find funding sources that align with our top private projects, and we find the low hanging fruit is, I mean, it sounds like the top priorities are not what we want most and crave most, like powder skiing. It's like, what's realistic?
Right,
What we can actually
it's the grease that's gonna allow the mechanism to get us to that next level, and we need that grease now.
Is there an opportunity with the federal funding cuts right now for us to kind of turn that around as a low hanging fruit? And have a small win out of that?
Well, yes, it goes back to, one of the topics of workforce development. As we've been talking about for months, that we're not gonna have a seasonal crew here, and we'll have less people too. So workforce development is an important part of this project. Talked as a group about working with Portland Community College to develop a program with them. You know, there's so much of, we're just staying tuned on how all this is gonna shake out.
Do I hear you also almost saying we'll be deputizing volunteers or volunteer organizations at some point, or is that?
We already do have a real strong volunteer program. Volunteers can only do so much, and only do what they really like.
That's exactly, and that's where my question was, do we have ways to fill in those gaps between what they don't
Yeah.
really like? Okay.
We're not gonna have volunteers out, we're not gonna have a full crew of volunteers out clearing trees on a lot of our trails. because
I think
volunteers-
depending on where and what it is, the amount, I think there could be a funder locally able to help launch some,
Some workforce development.
yeah,
Yeah.
we like workforce development.
Sure. Yeah, we all do. I mean, we all need.
Well, we as a funder, like workforce development.
The state does too, and it's a quick multifaceted win for all of us, so it'd be so.
Yeah. It supports a lot of economy, not just recreation, but just the business day in town.
And I know for us, like, we try to fund in 8 different categories or elements. And environment and economy and transportation are some pretty tough ones for me to find here because those projects are generally larger. So if we are thinking smaller, kind of easy to implement, quick to implement, that might be some good opportunity.
But those are some real key points that were brought up when we first met at PCC over a year ago with a very well attended, community meeting, access, transportation, workforce. And, you know, we're not Jacob County, we're not Steamboat, we have, thank goodness, thank goodness. Nor do we want to be, we've got different demographics, we've got different, really demographics.
And Nikki, if you brought the checkbook, I'm aware that James needs 13 million.
I have heard that number a couple of times, but sadly, that's over 30,000, like, just by a smidge.
With a bunch of 30,000s, that would equal.
That's a lot of 30,000.
We need PCC to have one hell of a construction program and build that thing.
Yeah, but they've proven to be kind of difficult, you know, I mean, yeah, and I think that's mostly because they're managed out of Pueblo.
Yeah.
And they don't really know,
Don't get us.
And that's nothing new, is it?
yeah, no, yeah. And it's the same way in, La Plata County. You know, they closed down some PCCA extensions, they shut down some programs. Pueblo doesn't like to support this part of the state for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, Southwest Conservation Corps would be another, you know, really strong partner in workforce development.
They
So
are,
it doesn't just have to be higher education.
we already have that relationship
Right.
in place, and that organization.
We're in AmeriCorps as well? Or they want to?
They get AmeriCorps stipends, so, indirectly, it's part of that program, I guess.
do we call this conservation groups? What do we call them?
Youth Corps?
Youth Corps groups?
But they
Yeah,
also
youth
have
corps.
adult
Yeah, youth-
corps.
Yep, youth and adult job corps, so that'd be.
You have to have outdoor.
Yeah.
You're not just, right?
Conservation Corps?
Yeah, I'm fine.
You got conservation.
Look at a little conservation corps.
That's what they are, right? Conservation legacy.
Yeah.
Southwest
Yeah.
Conservation Corps.
Can I circle back for a second to we keep sort of dancing around the cost estimate thing, and it seems like there's some need for some cost estimates, but then they're concerned about putting the cart before the horse. I just throwing this out as an idea, it may be a trashy idea, but would it be helpful to just do like a high, medium, low cost? Like categorize things by, by very, very, very rough categories, so that if we know that we have so much money or some amount, then we can look at one of these 5 projects. If we've got more, then we can, or have the opportunity to apply for more, so that maybe we are poised on some level to feed things up to the state, where it sounds like Brian's saying, like, they kind of want something to wrap their heads around, and we can have some estimates, but we're not putting a lot of our time into getting fine grained because we're not at that point yet. Would that be useful in any way?
I think it would care because a lot of the things they do with the state like that, there's a 25 to 50% variance in whatever. And they're fine. They just want a rough.
It seems like it might make us more poised to go, oh, we've got something in that category, or we've got something in this
Right,
category.
we'll have more buckets to play with as well, so yeah.
Just a thought.
Well, then would that require to bring those 5 projects into this mix? And the 5 projects, if I understand correctly, are coming from the work you did with Northern County, right?
Those are the ones so far that have been brought to theoretical fruition.
So we could, potentially put a price on those 5 projects.
James, don't you think we had such great numbers back then? We just need to put a multiplier on it.
Okay. So I think it's part of prioritization, right? The high, medium, low. And then we should absolutely do that. And then once we have the priorities, then we'll develop costs. I think the state's gonna wanna see that we're I'm not representing the state here. I just know that how you gotta get the money is eventually you gotta know how much it costs. Right? If you wanna apply and be part of that, I don't know, maybe we're not doing that right away. We'll find out, I guess. Okay, so we've got working with education institutes for workforce development. That is, they can train the people. We're still don't have any money to pay seasonal. We're gonna take that on, or are we just gonna hope that gets better, or what are we? It doesn't seem like once funding has been taken away from public lands agencies that it really ever comes back. I don't wanna make anybody, you are correct, but it does seem like once it gets squeezed out, then it doesn't ever.
It can come back and it takes twice the fight, 5 times as long.
But so not in the near future.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, throughout my career, I've just seen us get chunked down. And that's the direction we have been going and will continue to go.
So we have one suggestion to engage the volunteers with the trails groups, and I agree with that, man. Because I tried to use them for the survey, and they were like gung ho. It wasn't a very good fit to have trails people out there doing intercept surveys, but we tried. And they were willing to give it a shot and went out of their way to do this crazy thing with this consultant they'd never heard of before. And it was crazy. It was out of line with what they normally do, which is work on trails. We're here, a survey, give that to everybody you see, including ATVs and everybody. And they're okay, we'll try it. And they did, and they probably would have done more if I had more patience with that. But that's my story with it. They were totally willing to help. So that's one idea. It's a good one. We got anything else on volunteerism? There's a lot of that going on around here, I think, but.
I think we talked about volunteerism quite a bit, and I'm working on 3 different programs with the state right now to try and bring some of that down with some money. But I think volunteerism is a possibility there, only during the limited time that we have that kind of activity, that'd be May through September. Yeah, almost have that kind of push, whether that's exactly.
Okay, so what do we say about that? I think, initiate volunteer or continue efforts or?
Reinforce opportunities for volunteers might be a better approach on the wording. And we can do that, not just in our area, but we can partner with other DMOs and other agencies in the state that are really focused on that. We work with a lot of volunteer-owned agencies that have outlets for that as well.
I don't know what volunteerism is.
I'm so sorry. So volunteerism, it's a great thing. A lot of people travel through here. About 80% of our visitors come back for a second stay. Of those, 60% come back for a third stay, and 40% come back for a fourth or fifth stay, or they buy a secondary home here, which is great. But at some point during that process, they feel an obligation to give back to the community. So we give them opportunities to do that via volunteerism. So they're here for a 5 or 6 day itinerary. One day, or if that itinerary, hopefully the whole day, is going to be spent repairing trails, building trails, helping out with infrastructure here, there, or everywhere. What we've learned is there's not just the immediate benefit that you would expect from that. The nice thing is the secondary benefit is those folks that worked on that are so proud of that. They will drag other members of their family or their community back here to show them what they did. And that sparks future and further interest in it. This is something that the CTO still has money for. And that's why I'm excited about it, because they haven't spent all of it yet.
So there's a common thread here. One is, and that is, I think, you've got leadership. So the trails groups have their own leadership. They get organized. If you know the right guy to get a hold of, you can get an email out to the whole thing and get it done. And the same thing with volunteerism.
Also, you know, what Brian was just saying, it kind of sparked an idea. It might be, I know a lot of our businesses already, will do like a monthly donation. I don't know, like the zoo is selling artwork and they're going to donate the proceeds from that artwork this month to the food bank. I own my own little tour business and I'm going to ask for donations this year and dedicate it back to the Cortez Cultural Center because I mostly use Hawkins Preserve. I wonder if it, as a long-term goal, it would be cool to like build a coalition around tourism organizations accepting donations, but everybody gives that donation to the same trail crew or the same something once a month. That might be kind of a unique, interesting organization. I don't know. That's just the beginnings of an idea. I don't know where it's going. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but kind of this idea of like, hey, are you taking a tour? Are you staying at this hotel? Why don't you add $5 to your ticket price to go towards this initiative of Montezuma County this month? I don't know.
Just participate hands-on or not, Helen, it's a great idea, and I think it's also one of those things that really helps us understand the strength of the volunteer spirit in our community and from the tourists that come through, because that goes back to sustainable tourism, and that is what we're all about, and it helps, as you know, so I love that.
Right, and it doesn't put pressure on the businesses. I think our businesses are asked a lot to donate and they don't necessarily have the funds, but this is just asking the visitor and giving them a specific, reinforcing that sustainable tourism, that giving back to the place you're visiting, like Brian just mentioned. So just a thought. I think that would take a little bit longer term planning, but could be cool.
All right. Well, so far with workforce development, we got them educated, maybe.
Yes.
But are they hired and working yet? And are they getting paid? We worked a little bit on volunteer. Then I immediately got a little bit depressed looking at this one and moved to volunteers.
But what about with the workforce development, and even if it could be a mentor program and frame that as giving back to the community? So we all know that we are now lacking capacity at a staffing level and with infrastructure. And so maybe by working with PCC and CSU Extension, frame it as a mentorship program where they're actually learning the work skills out in the field, and it's helping out at least for the next 4 years.
And they'd be paid, correct? That
Well, I don't know how they would be.
Yeah. Well, that's one opportunity to pull these youth corps, youth and adult conservation corps in because
And what about NFF? Are they? They,
they will likely see cuts. So, that is going to be the challenge, is diminishing budget.
Anything else on volunteerism?
Something that I've wondered before is having kind of like, a list of projects that would be good for volunteers, like our organization has a lot of supporters and folks that are interested in these projects. We don't always have the right connections about what those projects are, so we're kind of hunting down with our federal partners, like what would be a good fit. But if there's some kind of database for potential projects that could connect volunteers, that could be a relatively easy thing with a high benefit.
And tremendously helpful at Central Clearinghouse for that.
Yeah.
That would be really good. Monday, you see Monday's chat there. Yeah.
No, can you read that, okay?
Let's see, not sure if this is where the information goes, but Jamie, myself, the volunteers, and Louisa, working for the Forest Service, both. Are working together to create informative educational signs regarding cattle grazing at Boggy Draw. Yes, to assist her boss, one of the city commissioners.
I'd say yes. That's another volunteer opportunity.
I don't know how to translate to it. That's a good strategy.
Cut and paste.
We report opportunities for volunteers, including, in this case, ranching community, or, ranching community, I guess, but. Yes. Permit holders for that. Okay. Slash ranching community slash permit holders.
All just grazing, or are we focused on grazing here? Or am I?
You can put grazing, yeah, I'm focusing on grazing.
Cool. Need another team there. Okay, cool. A little bit more there. Should we work on should we go to the next goal? This is
Yeah, I think so,
hard.
because you've rounded that out real nicely now. We're touching a lot of different elements, and that's what people are looking for.
You rounded it out. I just sat here and wrote stuff down. Okay. This one's kind of fun, right? It's different. It's not necessarily reliant on federal funding. Since there's been interest, I love that there's interest in the one to do an OREC study. I'll keep talking, bringing it up, but, one of the things, what we found, so I showed you those stats before, actually, I can kind of. We'll go back, I don't have a lot of time, but I'll go back and look at this here. We had this project right here where this is kind of a summary shot from it. We realized that all throughout the state, like Montezuma County does way better economically from outdoor rec than I thought. And really, I think anybody going into it, like 80 million is more than we thought for spending. And it was, it's real data and stuff, so. But what we realize is that it does terrible on just regular leisure shopping.
What's leisure shopping?
Just buying like Uree, that whole thing is leisure shopping.
Chocolate, coffee.
Yeah, that kind of stuff, just, it's Christmas ornaments and crap all like that, and people love it. I mean, it's like listed in the state tourism stuff, people list it as a recreational activity.
Or yeah, we have a heading called crapola and stuff.
So, a new business opportunity.
Exactly
right. So, frankly, we have partners like Jason, like AJ at Korea that are all focused on this too. And we've all identified this need, and we understand that OREC visitors are leaving our area unfulfilled, not because of the OREC, but because they couldn't buy the stuff that they wanted to buy all over here. There's nothing wrong with us meeting that challenge and overcoming that adversity. And it's Jason's job to do that.
So anyways, what we said and this is ambitious as heck, you said, okay, here's a thought. I mean, retail doesn't get any clout. Nobody like in economic development, they want like you to manufacture new aluminum parts for mountain bikes and stuff like that. They don't want like, retail just doesn't like play well in the economic, because it's not primary, it's not correct, it's boring, it's tourism, whatever. But, you know, in Montezuma County, like, it's a real need. So why not have, an entrepreneurial platform, you know, like an incubator, accelerator type of thing for retail?
Well,
And
there's a
there's
great
any
opportunity
specifically for that.
with what Beth is doing with the tribe. And what is that piece called?
The pottery shop.
With the pottery
Yeah,
shop.
pottery shop.
Down there.
Yeah,
The pink building, yes, sir.
I mean, that's what she's trying to do right now, is pull that together with local artists and actually local, not being just tribal, but regional. So I've tried to connect her with people in both in Dolores and Mancos so that we can kind of get some other artists in there, but that's, I mean, that's kind of that, and then wanting to put, what do you call them, food trucks and outdoor retail space in the parking lot there as well.
And
So
maker
like little
spaces,
pop-ups,
artist
yeah.
spaces, places to tell the story, show the demonstration. And to be fair to
I-
that, it's not.
I
just
would
us.
argue,
They've been
I would
funding.
argue that kind of, yes, entrepreneur and business development is super, super important. And I would actually argue that people are already doing that, like myself, Jason, Kriya, our chambers, like there is Fundamental Needs is a new organization in town. There's movement on that. It's slow going and there are other things that Jason and I have to do, but we are aware of that as an important need in our community. I actually think one of the things that in Cortez specifically, not so much Mancos maybe, that could be really encouraged by just general population, like Cortez downtown is not very fun to walk around. Like there's no trees, there's no benches to sit down. It's not comfortable. So pushing, and maybe take this off the record, I'm not speaking as a city representative, but pushing our elected officials to do something about that aesthetic, to pushing people to say, hey, we want trees downtown. We want, I don't know, maybe an overlay where the central business district can only be tourist facing, direct to consumer businesses, so that it's not filled with insurance agents and CPAs. Maybe pushing our elected officials that we want a fixed route bus that goes from the Cortez Airport to Mancos to Toyac to the Mountain Ute Casino over to Dolores, pushing these initiatives that we already have plans in place for, that we just don't have the capacity or the funding or have devoted time to finding the funding to move those initiatives forward, could make a big. And that's not us doing anything. That's us getting our people out to push for those kind of initiatives.
Ellen, speaking unofficially, it sounds like you would be the right person to point us in that direction. I don't mean that the way it sounds, but you know what I'm saying? But at the same time, it shows strength of community. It shows that those bonds are existent. It helps us push our elected officials once we have that gravitas to go to that next level. Is this what you're talking about?
Yeah, and like I have all these ideas in my head, but me just going to our city manager or like my boss and saying I have this idea is not very effective, right? Like they like me, but if it comes from a population of people saying we want these things, things happen, which is partly why I think Mancos has more going on downtown in some respects than Cortez.
Yeah.
So-
Anyway, we're doing the Main Street thing the next couple of years, and doing intentional planning around what we want downtown to look like and how we want that to expand outside of the downtown corridor, I think is for sure. I mean, specific to what we're talking about here, like retail stuff, you know, that's in a lot of plans that different organizations that I work with, like the Creative District is one, right? They're taking over the Opera House, and we keep talking about, well, maybe we should plop something like this, like a incubator space for people to come in and do different things and try things out, and they seem down with that. But I think a lot of what I'm running into when I'm trying to come up with these ideas is just a lack of space for these things to even occur. And So there's the reality, and then when anything does come up, when I've talked to people that I've sensed are kind of on that trajectory, like they wanna start a business like that, they're like, well, I can't afford the rent anyway. So. I think there's just some constraints around that as a capacity issue, places to do it, how much does it cost? Can't even get past that part of it, it's hard to figure out how to even keep your business going, so, and then, you know, I use your OREC data all the time now. It's great. People are like, wow, 11,000 people visited aqueduct trails, let's kill it. I'm like, yeah, start a business. Yeah. I think if we just kind of keep at it a little bit, you can keep using that data.
So this whole thing of an official incubator, like that might come out of broader efforts, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, that's where I think it's gonna happen.
But I'm putting this identified business space for startups, like, or we are the coalition here, so maybe we're not identifying it, but I don't know, we'll figure out what it is.
I don't know if it goes under this goal yet, or I don't remember what your other ones are, but, you talked a little bit about what the pathways, Mesa Verde is like, having that connectivity and wayfinding, I think are really important things, so you're guiding people, because especially, I know, in talking about Cortez and the South Broadway project, and, you know, sort of we're doing a little bit of branding and identifying, the downtown area, things like that, have that lead to Mesa Verde, have that lead to Vegas, have that lead to Dolores, you know, we've got more of a community-wide, region-wide strategy for wayfinding, and like what you said, the other day, they're having a suite of activities that are family friendly, and that are across all three communities. I feel like that needs to be in our strategies.
I just have to say, I appreciate this so much, and as the administrator for Trail of the Ancient City Byway, which is something we also do at Mesa Verde Country, and it runs through all the communities that are represented in this room, we need to remember wayfinding is where we're dropping the ball for everybody. When we lose people past Memphis, guess where they end up? Durango. When we lose them past Dolores, where do they end up? Telluride, okay? That's not the plan. They intended to spend time and money in our resource, but because we didn't properly identify it for them, they missed that opportunity. And since they're on vacation, they're gonna push on. This is the kind of thing that we need to think about with every step of this, and that's why I'm so happy to hear about wayfinding.
We already talked about this one a little bit. I wanted to sort of like, so we've been talking a lot about, I'm just, you know, a lot of when you talk about outdoor recreation industry, mostly people mean direct. So they mean like all these things here, manufacturing, osprey, tubers. This is, you know, we're getting a little bit out of, like, okay, guest ranch, definitely in there, I would say, hunting outfitters for sure. You got a ton of commercial campgrounds, that's probably the strongest, like, subsector that's really truly outdoor. I mean, a ton, like, it's amazing how many of those there are. So that's, you're set there, and some really good ones, as well, but so, this is kind of like, the visitor, the downtown thing is one thing, and then the actual, like, direct outdoor rec industry was another thing. So I just wanted to bring that out and see whether, you know, so when I have this, the way I think about them is that they're kind of different strategies, because with the visitor serving things, that overlaps so much with tourism and just downtown retail. And this outdoor industry itself is really a specific sector, and it requires its own efforts, I think. So that's kind of what I had in mind here, to some degree. And I kind of realized that I was like, what we were talking about here almost belongs ones in this one about services, right?
Yeah.
And then what we have here is kind of nothing. So, but that's all right. I don't know if we, I've been told that, like, with the outfitting, there aren't many slots left, which I believe, that there aren't many permits available. I don't know.
Well, that.
I bring that, I'm sort of like needling,
No, that's
a little bit to
No,
help.
that's correct. I mean, we have a proliferation of private hunters that are coming into the area. We've got a lot of commercial hunting operations here, and there's only so much space and wildlife to be able to handle that. So, I think our compartments, as we look at the forest, are at capacity to support both commercial operations and private hunters. We don't want to set up a business that's going to fail because it was not a successful hunting instance.
So in that space, is that like, does that require any effort, the permittees, or is that just gonna take care of itself? As somebody retires or fades out, like there's gonna be another one to fill their spot, or is there?
Yeah, there's always an interest in there's always an interest in somebody buying a new outfit or guide hunting permit. Where we do lack, we don't have bike tours here. We've got some limited, hiking tours. Wild West came in with their operation. We have some, and I think Wild West is interesting, so sort of a farm to table type of operation. So we do have some opportunities for new commercial operations.
These things could potentially get permitted because it's a new opportunity for commercial use.
Yeah.
Isn't
Yeah. I'll chime in on this one, just because this kind of fits into what we do at the ranch. So at the ranch, we've secured a 10-year permit from the BLM to use Phil's World for instruction and or guidance. That is something that I think, I haven't yet pursued from the National Forest Service. There's a lot of models out there in the West of doing the more alpine bike tours, whether it be shuttling or doing actual tours up in, say, off of the 145 corridor in the Colorado Trail. Those sorts of things are very popular in other areas. My experience with John at the BLM has been great because, it took a while, but they were very receptive to allowing me to have a permit to utilize the northern section of Phil's World. The trust land down on the south end of Phil's World creates a complicated issue around granting permits for use. But we're looking forward to utilizing that and doing stuff with that, and we're excited about it. I want to ask you, Gabe, a question about that title and this goal. What other things do you see falling under this, like event-wise or?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think like, I don't know if it's the 24 Hours of Masonry is like a nonprofit, but
Right.
some of them are private businesses.
Well, last year we had Yeti bikes come in here and run a Yeti Fest or something, and they brought in a bunch of their customers, and if you didn't spend enough on a bicycle, you could pay more. You could ride it, everybody's got a Yeti bike. I mean, that's a niche that's out there.
Yeah.
Were you saying the event thing, do you have a different thought on that, or is that another like business subsector to include in this, like this list around?
The other one-shot event that can potentially bring a lot of people to our community that we are very well situated for is Bike Festival.
Yep.
I go to various bike festivals, annually that draw a lot of people, and people drop a lot of dollars, both with private businesses as well as other things that are offered within the community, by the community for the participants of those events. And they're really cool. They fit our community and way that, you know, it draws a great audience. I've never been to a bike festival and walked away going, man, that was terrible.
And just to be specific, not like Ride the Rockies, which we're lucky to get every 3 years, which is great for 10 minutes, but like our gravel grinders or some of the other stuff that are organically developed and grown and managed within our.
Right, so, quick example, March, 13th through the 15th, I'll be in Sedona Mountain Bike Festival. It's a 3-day event. And it incorporates, demos. So they bring bike companies from around the world to come to demo their bikes. And they set up in an area that has access to very, very simple trails that anyone of any ability can come take out that bike that they really wanted to ride, and 10 other bikes that they really wanted to ride before they make a purchase, depending on, you know, on their experience on whatever bike. They also will incorporate music. So every evening there's a band. They incorporate local businesses, all the breweries, cideries, to come and participate in an event like that with the music.
Is that at like a campground or where is it housed in many different places?
Here, it could be regionalized, absolutely. Like, there could be one night where there's an offering at the, Cortez Amphitheater. There could be a band there on Friday night. There could be a main event, just hypothetically speaking, at the fairgrounds.
Or the host could be the Dolores Bike Hostel.
Or it could be the Dolores Bike Hostel, or there could be something at the Memphis Brewery, or the downtown in Memphis, or at, you know, you bring that, your community and your businesses in to create the experience for all of you.
Yeah,
Essentially.
a fall window, for instance, you would benefit Makers, Dolores and Cortez trail communities there because the weather is such where, yeah, you would have all of those different operations.
I think Fruita does something like that.
Yeah, Fruita has one, there are many, Bentonville has a very large one.
This seems like something that maybe wouldn't require as much funding as some of the other
No.
things we're talking about, because it's kind of, if you build it, they will come kind of a thing where we don't have to have a whole lot to create a project. The people are gonna bring their own, the vendors are gonna bring their own selves, and then the people are gonna bring the money, so this could be the kind of, well, you know, if we look in the prioritization, this could be a low hanging fruit possibility, and also build brand recognition for Montelores Coalition.
Yeah, and it could also, to Brian, to your point about, volunteerism.
Yeah.
That could play big into that, because that's where the trail organizations can come in and maybe have a trail project. People get jazzed about just about anything you're gonna offer at a festival like that.
They do, and the people that support a lot of what I do get jazzed about doing it in multi-communities, and we've got 3 of the best ones right here. We know how to work with each other, and that's where we get a lot of strength, get a lot of, tension from the state that way as well. It's not just about the state, but because that's the bedrock funding, yeah, it's kind of important to me. Guys, I've enjoyed this so much, I apologize, I've got a state call at 4 o'clock, I'm gonna leave, but thank you. What a great group, this is so engaging.
On the regional bike festival, what would that be for Montezuma County days? Would that be I mean, you'd have to get kind of far ahead of it with the county, right?
Yeah, I think
Something
you
like that.
really wanna go through planning on that. It's probably gonna require a special use permit. I don't see a high impact permit, but the special use permit, I think you definitely need that.
For use of the fairgrounds, or just an event of.
Maybe road impacts too.
Maybe road
Yeah.
impacts,
Does 12 hours require us? They're not using roads, they're using.
I'm not sure that we permit them for that particular route. CDOT does for actually getting through the,
Under the culvert.
yeah. But yeah, I don't recall the county is permitting anything on that. But for other similar type activities, like for example, you know, we've had some of those, rock crawling events, things like that, and typically they have to come in and do a special use permit. Sugar Pine Ranch Rally, that was kind of an example, very similar to the kind of stuff we were talking about here. Big one too.
So you'd wanna be what, a year out on something like that?
At least a year, yeah.
At least a year.
Now, we move things through fast in the county. I mean, if you're up there 3 months in advance, we can make it happen.
But it's better.
But it's better than JLR.
Well, that's a big
We've
project.
had so many instances where they come in 2 weeks before they want to do something, you know, and usually we can pull it off for them, but it's not good to do it that way.
And there'd be similar requirements in the municipality, right? I mean, you'd have to. Yeah, there's thresholds for special events that you've got. Go to city
So
council.
two quick thoughts on the bike festival. I think Kara's totally right. And then Lene also wrote in the chat that there's a lot of opportunity for agritourism. What I have found is that the capacity to organize that kind of event is really what we're lacking. None of our regional businesses have the capacity to do it. So maybe the coalition would be the right person to organize that and help build that. As Linnea said, it's really hard to pull ranchers together to speak with each other or other people. Same with local businesses. No one has the capacity to organize something like this. My second thought, and I just keep throwing this out there, I wonder if we can also brand it as family friendly. Like Montezuma is known for being family friendly. The city of Cortez motto is to be a nice place for families to live and work. And like Silverton is like, excuse my language, but badass. Like they're very intense. And I was like, you know, I can't keep up with them. And I think of myself as a relatively outdoorsy person. And I was thinking maybe that's our niche in Montezuma County is we have fun for the whole family. Like you can ride Phil's and you can do ribcage really fast, or you can take your kid around Hippie House. So
Good points.
All right, well, I ain't taking my kid around the hippie house, but.
So I'm gonna add one other thing is, you know, look at one of the festivals that we got going that's successful, like the Dolores River Fest.
Yeah.
And, you know, kind of talk to the people who organize that, figure out what it takes to put it together.
Yeah.
A lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That is gonna be a volunteer intensive effort. They start doing that 6 months out for this Road Bike Fest.
Yeah.
They start putting out the feelers for volunteers, and again, we're a very volunteer heavy community, so I think we would get good reception there.
Good.
I wanted to chime in. I know one of the first meetings we had, maybe it was the first meeting we had, there was an overall consensus of, you know, preventing our region from becoming the next Moab or Salida, if you will. And I think this is a really appropriate goal to make sure we circle back on that other goal, because the momentum here feels converse to that or in conflict to that a little bit. So I just wanted to make mention of that. Thanks.
I think you bring up a really good point, because I think a lot of other communities have grappled with this, that have these. I think what sets areas like Sedona, Bentonville, Las Vegas, and Moab are the way that they market. They specifically market internationally.
Yeah.
Like it's not an unintentional thing that they have burst at the seams and are throwing consistently Band-Aids over problems they've created. I think that if we are careful about, you know, we don't want to over advertise anything in any one particular recreational area. But I do think a singular event like that, because we are already getting that traffic through our corridors, wouldn't be a bad thing, but certainly is a good point that you bring up, Alex, and I think it's the way we market it and how far we market it. That would be the difference of it impinging on that goal we talked about earlier.
And maybe tying it into the family friendliness and, I keep thinking about like bringing in people who aren't the, you know, crazy bikers and like making it more accessible for everybody might help prevent it from being this insane.
I think
event.
I think it's also like important to remember maybe the limited amount of that style of marketing that was done, for example, with Ice Lakes, but what has happened to Ice Lakes because of social media and the reality that it's not necessarily within our control if the resource is there and it becomes a popular resource. Having a plan to sort of explore mitigating the impacts ahead of time could be beneficial, because I think that the permitting systems that come into place as an afterthought are often, as we've seen with the fire up in Ice Lakes, a little bit too late. So maybe just having an idea of at what point do we decide to implement mitigating actions for overuse, and what do those look like? And I know that this is separate from the overall conversation of having the like these sorts of fundraising events or festivals. This is more of maybe it fits in somewhere else goal of just mitigating those sorts of things, because as we are reaching out for tourists and voluntourism and that sort of thing, and we're focusing on like these Instagram like hotspot areas and views, like this is what we're inviting. And so just because we don't put it on a YouTube ad doesn't mean it's not going to happen, I guess.
Also an opportunity to be able to include education and stewardship in the messaging.
Yeah. And the family part, I think, is a big one. Also, our connection with, tribal, organizations is huge. Down in New Mexico, and, Arizona, there are a lot of organizations working within the Navajo Nation and the Hopi initiatives of getting kids on bikes, and utilizing the bike as a tool. We had that film back in March at the Speakeasy Theater, in the dirt. So that, could certainly be something to be brought in to separate it from the other types of bike events out that there are, hardcore or whatever you want to call them. We have the opportunity to really shape the experience in certain directions. But yeah, I totally hear that. Uncontrollables, right? We're on Instagram. Hashtag ribcage. I mean, it's big.
Yeah.
You ask anyone who comes from out of town that wants to ride Phillipsburg, they'll tell you the trail they want to ride. So yeah, I mean, the uncontrollable social media thing is a definite uncontrollable.
Well, it was interesting with Yeti, that Yeti bike program wanted to come here. They first wanted to go around Rico. And Rico was really concerned about that number of people showing up there. And Yeti was cognizant of the fact that they needed to maintain relationships with their customers. And so they chose to go someplace else, and Maker's Trails Group was happy to support them here. So there's some self-policing going on, I think, by industry to a degree, and communities too.
What are some other things coming up in the chat here?
They keep blowing by so fast I can't.
Yeah, so Helen's saying she completely agrees with Alex. She views her job as trying to create economic stability and opportunity while at the same time protecting our wild open spaces. It's a definite important part of the conversation, and it is.
Yeah, I mean, I think the point of like timing of the sort of visitor impact planning is key, because otherwise, if you got that in place and something starts getting out of hand, you're like, whoa. Or if there's a special use permit, James got a copy of that thing. He's like, hey, maybe the county hasn't adopted it, but they're, he can say like, hey, look at this, here's the thing. This event is like special for us. We're not trying to market this place to the entire world. It's our event. We want to do it because we think it's fun. here's all the things we're concerned about. I think that's important. And I think they communicate, you know, that chafing plan, I think they communicate off of that a lot. People that don't even know the plan know the company line, sort of, you know. So they've lost it, like the locals up there have lost a lot of opportunities that they used to have. Because they all agreed, like, we gotta shut this camping down off this creek, it's ruining it, you know, we have to stop it, all of us. So, I was gonna say, toward the close here with 4.3, I might just ask Brian to help me with this one, unless you guys have some more thoughts. If everybody, is willing with that. Is that okay, that I just get him to put some of that in? So, we really are positioned so that next time I can have the draft goals and strategies for us to review. I mean, we're there, and then we can go through, so it's gonna require, it'll be more like a 8.5 by 11 type thing. And, I'll probably put, you know, some other content, start roughing out some of the other content that's supposed to be in the plan in there. But at very least, we'll get to look at all these things that we've written, because we're doing that right now. Like, we're going back, we're remembering things that we, you know, so we're already circling back. I think it's a good time to do that. And when I send it out to you all, you know, I don't wanna say it's the final shot, but this next meeting is a really good opportunity to fill gaps and sort of bring things up that didn't make it, you know, into the meetings because you were too quiet or too tired, or it just didn't, the timing wasn't right. So I think advanced review on this next coming one is gonna be worthwhile, because what we're gonna do in the following meeting after that is basically set up action planning templates for each one of these goals. And then, I don't know, we'll probably break into groups, depending on what our expertise, because that's how we'll be able to get through more of them in that action planning meeting. And then we're gonna be like saying, who's gonna do this? What's step one? What's step two? What funding sources? We're gonna like fill out all the knowns that we have in that action plan. That'll fill out the rest of the things that we know needs to be done. And then it'll kind of be the whole plan, or the next step after that, after we do our action planning, I'll turn that back to you, goals, strategies, action steps. And then the next version of this thing will be like the first draft of the actual plan. That's got all the introductory stuff and content in it. I'm good? Well,
I have a question.
so our next,
Again, being the new girl, real quick, is there a point in this where we take that plan and share it back to municipalities, counties, things like that? Because I understand that one of our intents might be in the future to have those entities adopt this as formal plan. So I'm just curious, at what point do we send that out for some kind of review? Or do we?
what do you think, James? On like, I mean, should it be done? Should we step in increment, like midstream with it, maybe?
I would have something pretty well fleshed out, I think, before taking it forward.
And it's not like we're asking for approval, right? It's not the way I see it.
I'd say we're asking for approval, but we're asking for their collaboration.
Okay, but is there anything within the grant proposal or the proposal that we put together that, as far as deliverables, when we first got this funding?
Just developing a plan, and ideally, you want your counties on board with it and supporting it and whatever, however that is.
I think they wanna see it, right, before they decided how to handle it.
They need something to review, something to look at, something that's pretty well thought through.
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, we're just gonna confuse them, and things will go really far south.
And I think that's probably true for the municipalities too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
like
think
it's
didn't Chafee take theirs to the county and they adopted it? Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing we wanna work on, but I totally agree with James, it needs to be pretty fleshed out, and we need to do quite a bit of homework going back into that, because by and large, the counties, other than and in municipalities, is those are just representative, by and large, nobody's very aware about where we've taken this since the time that I presented to the boards of commissioners and got their support to go ahead with that initial grant proposal.
Yep, well, you got good people to help with kind of prepare the elected officials on this group, so that's good. But yeah, it sounds like we get the thing in draft and then go to it.
I would think so. And you change that.
Yeah.
It would be pretty solid.
What do you think about providing a comment period for our stakeholders?
Yes. Yeah, if anybody gives comments on a plan that I was involved in writing, like, that's, people don't do it for the most part, so I take it like, somebody's got a comment, I try to do something with it. If I can understand it, I'll try to do something with it, so, for sure. All right, well, our next meeting is on March 25th, we're a little bit off rhythm because it's spring break the week before that, so that's still just a Tuesday at 2. Right here, we'll get you the draft material just as soon as we can crank it out. We'll be ready to go through the whole, all of them. Yeah, thank you all for showing up. Thanks, Kate. Grinding through it.